All right, let's look at these two art world outsiders, SLART and Jean-Michel Basquiat.
Yeah, both incredible artists and really, really fascinating when you consider that they both, uh, embraced this raw kind of outsider aesthetic that Jean Dubuffet called art brut.
Exactly, and they work in such different styles and eras, but both were drawn to this idea of art that exists outside of the traditional art world.
Right, it's art that's unfiltered,
Unpolished, yeah.
driven by a very personal vision.
Like a primal energy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So how did that translate into their individual styles? Let's start with Slart. He's a contemporary artist working in that art brut style.
The slart, yeah. You immediately see this vibrant energy, especially in his use of color. Like
Yeah.
his recent Trespasso series is a great example. He uses these bold, almost jarring color combination, like electric blues against these fiery oranges.
Wow.
And his brushworks, it's gestural, almost frenetic at times, which adds to that feeling of raw emotional expression.
I'm looking at Plane from that series, and I'm struck by how he uses those colors to create this intense feeling of eye contact. It's almost unsettling, but also incredibly captivating.
It is, yeah. He's playing with the power of gaze in that piece. And then you have I Am That I Am, which explores a different aspect of eye contact. It's more about losing yourself in another person's gaze, that feeling of merging or dissolving into someone else. And the colors here are softer, more ethereal, but the intensity is still there in the way he renders the eyes.
It's fascinating how he uses color and composition to evoke such specific emotions. But Slart's work isn't just about exploring these abstract ideas. He also delves into very personal experiences, particularly his journey with chronic kidney disease.
Yeah, and he does so with incredible honesty and vulnerability. His series on kidney disease includes paintings like Shred 4 Hours, Kidney Disease Isn't Scary, and Overloaded, where he visually captures the physical and emotional toll of the disease.
The results, a diptych from that series, is particularly powerful. You see this fragmented timeline of his diagnosis and its impact. It's almost like you're experiencing the weight of that reality alongside him.
It is. And what's interesting is that even in these pieces that deal with such a difficult subject matter, there are moments of humor and playfulness. Like in Shred 4 Hours, he incorporates these cartoonish figures that seem to reference Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles villains.
That's so interesting. It's unexpected,
Yeah.
and it adds this layer of complexity to the work. It's like he's saying, even in the face of adversity, there's still room for a bit of absurdity and lightness.
Absolutely. And that's something that really resonates with me in Slart's work. He's not afraid to embrace the full spectrum of human experience, even the messy, uncomfortable parts.
And it's important to note that his exploration of these themes isn't confined to just his paintings. He's constantly experimenting with different mediums,
Right.
collage, mixed media, even a return to pen and ink in his Bruno 1-8 series.
Yeah, and that series is so interesting because it highlights another aspect of his artistic personality. He said that he was inspired by his childhood drawing style for those pieces, and you really see this childlike sense of wonder and exploration coming through.
There's a freedom and looseness there that's almost reminiscent of, well, of Basquiat in a way.
You're right to draw that connection. Now, Basquiat, working primarily in the 1980s, might seem stylistically very different from Slart. His Neo-Expressionism is full of this raw energy, this frenetic use of line and color, and there's a strong social and political commentary running through his work. But what unites them, I think, is this shared spirit of art brut, this rejection of conventional artistic norms.
So let's dive into Basquiat's world a bit. His work is so visually arresting, those bold colors, the fragmented figures, the recurring motifs of crowns and skulls. What's he trying to communicate through this unique visual language?
Yeah. Well, Basquiat's art was very much a reflection of his own lived experience as a young Black man navigating a complex social and political landscape in 1980s America. He was grappling with issues of race, identity, power, and social injustice, and these themes are woven into the very fabric of his work.
His art is so full of life and energy, but there's also this undercurrent of urgency, of anger even. You could feel the pulse of the city, the energy of the street in every brushstroke.
And that energy is directly connected to his early days as a graffiti artist, tagging buildings in Lower Manhattan with his friend Al Diaz under the name SAMO. They were creating this public dialogue using the city as their canvas, and that same spirit of rebellion and social commentary carried over into his later studio work.
You know, it's amazing to think about how his early life experiences, learning to read and write at 4, his family's move to Puerto Rico, his struggles with his mother's mental health, might have shaped his artistic vision.
Absolutely. All of those experiences, the challenges and the triumphs are infused into his work. And then there's the influence of his intellectual pursuits. He was fascinated by anatomy, having received Gray's Anatomy as a gift from his mother when he was just 7. He also had a deep interest in African art and history.
And you can see those influences in his work. The anatomical drawings, the recurring motifs of heads and skulls, the way he blends text and image. It's all
Mhm.
part of this complex visual language that he created.
He was constantly drawing inspiration from these diverse sources, weaving together high and low culture history and personal experience to create something entirely new and powerful.
And he had this incredible ability to elevate everyday objects and symbols.
Hmm.
Crowns, for example, become these powerful symbols of Black identity and power in his work.
Precisely. Look at paintings like Charles I or King Zulu. The crowns aren't just decorative elements, they're statements about Black excellence, about reclaiming power and challenging traditional narratives.
And he wasn't afraid to tackle difficult subjects like slavery, head-on paintings like Slave Auction, Undiscovered Genius of the Mississippi Delta, and Jim Crow are incredibly powerful in their directness and rawness.
There's an unflinching honesty in his work, a willingness to confront the uncomfortable realities of racism and social injustice. And that rawness, that sense of urgency, is something he shares with SLART, even though they worked in different eras and styles.
It's fascinating to see how these two artists, both influenced by Art Brut, both pushing boundaries and challenging conventions, arrived at such distinct yet somehow connected artistic expressions.
And that's what makes the idea of their collaboration so intriguing. What would happen if you brought these two powerful artistic voices together?
Exactly. What kind of artistic fusion would emerge?
Yeah.
But before we dive into that, I think we need to delve a little deeper into Jean Dubuffet and his concept of Art Brut.
Yeah, Dubuffet, he was really a revolutionary figure in the art world. In the 1940s, he started championing this idea of art brut, which literally means raw art. And it celebrated art created outside of the established art world.
So we're talking about art made by people who weren't formally trained,
Hmm.
who weren't necessarily trying to fit into any particular artistic movement or style.
Exactly. Dubuffet was fascinated by art that came from a place of pure, unfiltered creativity, often created by individuals on the margins of society, psychiatric patients, prisoners, self-taught artists. He saw in their work a kind of raw, primal energy that he felt was missing from the overly intellectualized art of the mainstream.
And both Slart and Basquiat, in their own ways, embody that spirit of art,
Yeah.
right? They weren't following trends or trying to please critics. They were driven by something deeper, something more visceral.
Absolutely. You can see Dubuffet's influence in their rejection of traditional artistic conventions, their embrace of raw materials and unconventional techniques, their willingness to express themselves with complete freedom and honesty.
It's like they're both tapping into this wellspring of creativity that exists outside the boundaries of the art world, a space where the rules are different, where anything is possible.
Yeah, and that's what makes the idea of their collaboration so exciting. Imagine bringing together Slant's vibrant color palette and intensely personal narratives with Basquiat's raw energy, his social commentary, his mastery of symbolism and text. What kind of dialogue would emerge between their styles?
It's interesting. I'm thinking about Slart's focus on eye contact, that intense gaze that draws you into his paintings. How would that interact with Basquiat's recurring motif of heads often crowned or adorned with halos?
Oh, that's a fascinating point. I'm imagining a portrait where Slart's subject stares directly out at the viewer with that characteristic intensity, while Basquiat's hand imbues the figure with symbolic power, maybe through a crown or a halo, about a comment on Black identity and the legacy of historical figures.
And what about their use of color? Slart's work is so bright, so full of life, while Basquiat's palette is often darker, more intense, reflecting the urban landscapes and social issues he was engaging with.
I wonder if their colors would clash or complement each other. Would the canvas explode with vibrant energy, or would it be a more nuanced interplay of light and dark, a reflection of the complexities they were both exploring?
Basquiat loved to incorporate text and symbols into his work. How would Slart, who's more focused on visual storytelling, respond to that element? Would we see a merging of their visual languages, or would their distinct approaches remain separate, creating a kind of visual tension on the canvas?
And what about the thematic elements? Both artists dealt with issues of identity, social injustice, personal struggles. Would those shared concerns come to the forefront in a collaborative piece?
It's mind-boggling to think about all the possibilities. Of course, a real collaboration between these two is impossible, given that Basquiat passed away in 1988. But the very act of imagining it.
It opens up new pathways of understanding, doesn't it? It allows us to see their individual works in a new light, to appreciate the nuances of their styles and the depth of their artistic visions.
It's like we're creating a mental exhibition, drawing connections and contrasts, exploring what might have been. And in doing so, we're gaining a deeper appreciation for the power of art brut and its ability to disrupt and challenge the art world.
And that's what's so important about exploring artists like SLART and Basquiat. They remind us that art doesn't have to be confined to galleries and museums, that creativity can flourish anywhere and anyone, regardless of background or training.
They challenge us to expand our definitions of art, to look beyond the familiar, to embrace the raw, the unexpected, the unconventional.
Speaking of which, for anyone who wants to explore their work further,
Where should they start?
well, for SLART, his website and Substack are great resources. He shares a lot of his work online, and he's very open about his creative process and his personal journey, which makes his work even more engaging.
His website is a visual feast. You can really get a sense of his vibrant personality and his passion for art.
Absolutely. And for Basquiat, there are numerous books and documentaries available, but I'd also recommend checking out the YouTube video Brut My Beauty, Jean Dubuffet and Jean-Michel Basquiat on the Barbican Center channel. It's a fascinating exploration of the connection between these two artists and how Dubuffet's ideas about outsider art continue to resonate today.
I love those art history deep dives on YouTube. They always send me down fascinating rabbit holes.
Me too. It's a testament to the enduring power of these artists and to the enduring fascination with art that challenges conventions.
And that's what we hope you take away from this exploration, a renewed curiosity about the world of art brut, and a desire to seek out those artists who are forging their own paths, creating art that speaks to their unique experiences and visions.
You know, it's interesting how both SLART and Basquiat, despite being considered outsiders, they achieved a level of mainstream success. Does that change how we view this concept of outsider art? That's a really good question, and it's something that's been debated for decades. I mean,
Yeah.
some argue that once an outsider artist achieves mainstream recognition, their work kind of loses that outsider status, but others believe that the artist's intentions and creative process are more important than their level of fame.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. It's about the artist's relationship to the established art world,
Mm.
not about their popularity.
Mm.
Both SLART and Basquiat, even with their success, they maintain that independent spirit, that commitment to creating art on their own terms.
Exactly. They weren't trying to fit into any pre-existing categories or cater to market trends. Their work came from a place of deep personal truth and authenticity, which is at the heart of what art brut is all about.
And I think that's ultimately what makes their work so compelling, so enduring. It transcends those categories and speaks to something universal in the human experience.
Yeah. Their art reminds us that creativity knows no boundaries, that beauty can be found in the unexpected, and that the most powerful art often comes from those who dare to challenge those conventions.
It's a reminder to embrace our own individuality, to tap into our own creative potential, and to never be afraid to express ourselves authentically, even if it means standing apart from the crowd.
Yeah, because it's in those moments of bold, unfiltered expression that we truly connect with ourselves and with the world around us.
Well said. I think that's the perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining me on this exploration of art brut and the fascinating worlds of SLART and Jean-Michel Basquiat.
It's been a pleasure.